All right, so we're back where we started on this one. About to put that left rear wheel bearing in. If anyone recalls from previous TikTok videos I made, that's how all this started. I was just trying to change the left rear wheel bearing, and one thing led to another, and I restored the entire rear end of my car. So, here she is. Nice and smooth, brand new. I like to put a little anti-seize on it right here on this surface that gets sort of pressed into the hub, and on the flange surface, the inside of the flange surface, so it doesn't get seized up for next time if you have to change this part again. And it's a lot easier then. Got to use the copper anti-seize for this because I'm told that the silver anti-seize, though I've never experienced this, I'm told that it will kind of solidify into a weird paste and actually make matters worse, mostly due to the temperatures around the wheel bearing here. The copper anti-seize is supposed to be more heat resistant. It even says so on the outside of the bottle, so you know it must be true. So we just kind of paint that around, and you'll notice that I'm putting a pretty thin coat on. I'm not gooping it up too much on there. That's because I do not want to cause a hydrolock situation where this stuff sort of collects and pools up back there as I'm reassembling it, and then creates a pocket of goop that will not compress and will not escape and prevents me from tightening it down all the way against the flange. We don't want that. So we're not going to go too crazy here. We're just going to get a nice thin layer of it on there, just all over these parts, but not a lot, because that can cause problems. Again, these are things I've been told, not necessarily consequences I've experienced myself, but it doesn't sound like a consequence I want to experience, so here I am taking their advice. I recommend you take mine. So you can see I already have the bearing hub assembly bolts inserted. That's what I'm going to hang the backing plate on, but I need to get a little bit of this. I'm using bushing grease. You could use probably any kind of grease that's suitable for rubber, polyurethane, stuff like that. And I'm just going to grease this little O-ring here that kind of supposed to seal dust, I think, out of the inside of the parking brake system. You know, that it could get in there through the hole for the parking brake cable. So I just seal that O-ring on the cable there, or I'm sorry, I grease that O-ring on the cable there, and I slide it in. Just that helps it, because sometimes it binds up if you don't grease it first and misshapes the O-ring and everything. You don't want that. So, grease it. Then I try to hang the backing plate on these bolts that I've sort of put in there ahead of time. That parking brake cable does make it challenging because it's putting a little bit of tension on the backing plate, wanting to push it back off, right? Especially here on the towards the front of the vehicle. So you kind of have to hold it on once you get it in there. And the idea is, if you can get the bearing on there, the bearing hub assembly here, and you have to get that. There we go. That one went easy, but sometimes when you're trying to get those axle splines you know, to line up, you got to jiggle it and real carefully. Don't use a lot of force or anything like that, because it will potentially kind of bind it up or even damage something if you go too far with it. Now me, I like to like to get these all started by hand, one at a time, in a sort of a cross pattern. Make sure that they're threading in and not cross threading. And then after I get that done, I'll just be tightening them with the ratchet in kind of in steps, you know, so that they get evenly tightened and it sucks the bearing into the housing in an even way to help it go in smoother and easier and more perfecter. Yeah, that's what we like. I think I got 3 out of the 4 started nicely now. And I think I got 4 out of the 4 started nicely now. So that's great. It's coming along very easy. We like to see that. Boy, do we like to see that. Might even say we love to see that. Yeah, we love it. It's coming together quite nicely, actually. That's good stuff. Good stuff, buddy. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Okay. It's starting to feel tight enough to where I can use the wrench here, because I'm sort of hitting the limit of my finger's ability to go much further. And for me, I'm just kind of feeling around back there to get it on there. Some people, you know, you might have to lay down underneath there and kind of get it lined up visually, but I'm able to do it by feel, so that I feel saves me some time. Because what I'm really watching for as I'm tightening this slowly is I'm watching for, you know, which part is the furthest out still and needs help. It needs to be brought in to make it go in evenly. And I like to see that here where the backing plate meets the hub, or where the flange of the where the backing plate meets the what do you call it? Sorry, it's hard for me to explain it and do it at the same time. But here I am. Here we are. We're getting through it together. I keep having to change between having this extension and not having this extension, because some of these bolts are easier to get to from under here, a little bit further back using the extension, and then the bolts more towards the rear are, if you use the extension, you hit this strut tower, so you gotta sort of switch it out as you go around. Getting there though. We're getting it brought in nicely, I'd say. I love how nicely we're getting it in there. It's perfect. So smooth. Only a couple more rounds and we'll have it all the way seated back against the flange there, just like we want it. Gotta switch back out to the extension. you know what? This bottom one really could use some extra loving. I'm now seeing that. It's probably the one that's furthest away from being all the way in. Yes, it is. We're going to fix that though, folks. Yes, we are. There we go. We're very close. We're very close now. Switch back over to this side, and we're going to give it our final hand tightening before torquing anyway. We wouldn't want to call it final tightening because we still have to put the torque wrench on there, but, you know, final hand tighten. There's one. There's another. Oh yeah, one more to go, babies. There she is. Perfect. I mean, you have to go back there and torque down all those bolts to spec. Got to go look up the spec. Got to throw that axle nut on there and torque that to spec. And don't forget to smash it in right there where that little notch is. Got to smash the axle nut in to lock it in place. Last yahoos who did this job on my car, should have done it myself. They forgot to do that. Luckily, I caught it before anything bad happened. And honestly, probably nothing bad would happen, but I like things done properly, by the book. Torque your shit to spec. Do the right steps.